in Egypt right now. And I think if this continued, we will probably see an end to the Mubarak regime as a whole, not just for minor figures within it.
Omar Ashur, thanks very much for the moment. Let's now speak with Abdullah Al-Ash'al. He's a former Deputy Minister for Foreign Affairs of Egypt. He's also a member of the opposition. What signal is President Mubarak sending by stepping down as head of the NDP?
Yes, I think this is a floundering of the ruling party. And this also prelude for the sitting down of President Mubarak. Because President Mubarak is at the head of the pyramid, and this pyramid is collapsing now. And they have admitted that key members in their cabinet were corrupt, and they had been now before the court. They are going to be tried afterwards. So I think that this is an attestation on the part of the President Mubarak and his regime that the corruption had been deep even in the minister's key persons. I think this is one of the consequences of the accelerated revolution in Egypt, and also the international pressure, especially the United States and European Union. Today we have a special envoy. This is Mrs. Ashton, which is taking care of the file of the foreign affairs and security. And I think she met with President Mubarak, and she is ready now to accept many of these changes to satisfy the international community that President Mubarak is not neglecting the pressures of the United States and Europe.
But looking at the internal situation, though, how do you think this decision by President Mubarak will affect the calculations being made by the opposition itself? Will it have any impact? Will some people be more sympathetic to entering into some kind of a dialogue with the Vice President and the government, given some of these concessions that have now been made?
Yes, I think this also could be one of the evidences of the credibility of the Vice President, and to absorb the whole situation, to reach a certain ultimate point that Mubarak should survive, not to collapse or to be dismissed. But I think by the sequence of events will lead to the collapse of President Mubarak himself. So I think that this is one of the victories of the revolution, and I cannot see anything else, even if they are maneuvering and they are attempting for the realities. At the end of the day, this is the collapse of the regime, and I think that we are reaching the end.
The opposition, though, is focusing all of its efforts and demands on the departure of one person, and one person only, it seems, at this point, and that is President Hosni Mubarak. If Omar Suleiman and the other figures, the other old guard, remain in positions of influence and power, will the demonstrators have failed in their demands? Should they be focusing on the regime as a whole, or simply on the departure of President Mubarak?
And I think that they are still insisting that Mubarak should sit down. We cannot accept anything less than this demand, because if Mubarak steps down, this means that the whole regime, as we see, is collapsing totally. And we can start a fresh new regime, and we are not confused at all concerning what will come next.
Can you give us a sense, perhaps, finally, of what the opposition has focused on in its meetings today with the government, and how many opposition groups were represented?
Yes, some of the opposition had accepted the dialogue with the government, but some of them, and including the Muslim Brotherhood, refused to dialogue with the government without the sitting down with President Mubarak. And I think I'm included in this group.
How representative then of the opposition are these groups who've accepted to sit down with the Vice President? And do you think without the Muslim Brotherhood being represented, this dialogue can be credible?
No. The Muslim Brotherhood is a great portion, and they are contributing also in the revolution, and they are counted and they are admitted now finally by the government. This was a clear hint in the interview of Mr. Omar Suleiman.
Abdullah Al-Ash'al, thank you very much indeed for joining us from Cairo. Let's speak now to our correspondent who is around Tahrir Square, I believe. Give us a sense of the atmosphere now. I see flags being waved, a lot of patriotism over the last few days among the crowds, chants of the national anthem, and it sounds like speeches are going on at the moment.
Yes, speeches are going on at the moment, but the crowd is actually emboldened. There was a bit of a lull this morning. There was a lot of hesitation of what to do, but really the events over the last 2 hours, first by a senior commander of the army coming into the square by foot, asking them to leave, had a bit angered them, and they had insisted that they will stay. And then shortly after that, the announcement made on national TV that Gamal Mubarak and other senior figures of the government have been pushed aside, have been ousted from the National Democratic Party, and then finally the news that President Mubarak himself has resigned from that party has emboldened them. And then there is a sort of euphoria here, people thinking, well, they're getting much closer to their aim. That is giving them certainly the energy to come back, and I have to remain rather on the square. And I have to tell you also that since all that news has been coming out, more people are pouring into Liberation Square, even though it is nighttime, it is cold, and it is raining. So certainly a shift of mood throughout the day here on Liberation Square.
As you say, demonstrators must feel that they've gained considerable ground just by staying put and by holding firm and holding on to their position in Tahrir Square. They see the concessions coming one after the other. The curfew does begin, though, in just about half an hour. Will the army be able to enforce it this time? And they said they had every intention to do so by simply appealing to the demonstrators to go home.
Well, the army tried to appeal to the demonstrators to go home. The walk of that senior general across the square was a plea from him for the demonstrators to go home, for normalcy to return to the streets of Cairo. But he fell on deaf ears. He was followed by a trail of people who were telling him, we will stay, we will stay, we will stay. So at the moment, everybody here knows that the army eventually has the final word in what will happen. It is really the entity that will decide of the fate of President Hosni Mubarak. If the army puts enough pressure on President Mubarak, it will tell him to leave. If it decides that now him remaining in power is causing too much risk for the stability of the country. But it's a very fine line that the army is towing. It wants to keep the privileges it had, and it has considerable privileges in this country, and it also wants to be perceived as one of the people, because it doesn't want to find itself in the same situation of the police, which is actually now hated across the country for its behavior over the past 12 days.
Has there been a shift, though, in the way the army is being perceived? Do the people in Tahrir Square still believe the army is neutral in this crisis, or have they lost much faith in the army when it stood by on Wednesday while protesters were being attacked by those from the pro-Mubarak camp?
I don't think it's lost its faith. I mean, the army all along has been very friendly to the demonstrators. It has not stepped in when there was the violence, but it has also not repressed the demonstrators. And actually, after the violence earlier this week, it has fortified its positions around the square, and from this morning, it has taken over at least the first round of security of people getting into the square. Certainly, people are wondering what game is the army playing. When is the army finally going to have a position? When is it going to speak out? But I don't think anyone wants to alienate the army here. Also because the army is a very highly respected institution in this country. It is very highly appreciated, and everybody knows that even if there is a post-Mubarak time, and it is a transitional time to go to reach a sort of democratic rule. The army will be playing a very important role in that. As I said earlier, it has privileges. It won't let go of these privileges because basically the army has been ruling the country since the 1952 revolution.
Thanks very much for now. We're still looking at those live pictures in Cairo's Tahrir Square. The crowd's still very much there. The curfew about to be imposed. Still to be seen whether or not it will be respected. That's in about 25 minutes from now. We'll, of course, check in again on these live pictures. But let's bring you up to date with some of the international reactions we've heard in the last 24 hours. Hillary Clinton, the U.S. Secretary of State, has warned of a perfect storm